All right, welcome back, everyone. We're ready for another deep dive. And
Excited to jump in?
yeah, this one's going to be interesting, I think. We're looking at a pretty short but powerful chapter from the Quran called Surah Al-Humazah.
Yeah, it's a really fascinating one.
It is, and it kind of speaks to, I think, some pretty universal human flaws. Things like slander and backbiting and, or sometimes unhealthy relationship with wealth. And so I think it's going to resonate even with listeners who may not be deeply familiar with Islamic scripture or anything like that.
Exactly. And even though it is brief, Surah Al-Humazah, really uses some strong imagery and powerful language to get its point across.
Yeah, for sure. So like right off the bat, the first couple of verses, we're confronted with this pretty harsh condemnation of every slanderer or backbiter. And the surah doesn't really mince words here. It feels like a pretty direct call out. So I'm curious from, your perspective and understanding, why is this such a big deal? What's the significance of, this idea of backbiting, in Islamic thought?
Well, in Islam, backbiting is considered a major sin. It's not just, idle gossip. It's about intentionally damaging someone's reputation. It's about breaking down trust and creating division within the community. Think about it. Think about the impact words can have. They can wound deeply and have lasting consequences.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's really interesting to me how the surah then kind of shifts focus to those who hoard wealth, right? There's this almost obsessive description of counting and protecting, all their riches as if they believe it will shield them from everything.
Yeah, I see that. It's like, they're trying to find security in their possessions, but this sort of reminds us that wealth, it's fleeting. You can't take it with you, and it can't ultimately protect us from death or judgment.
Yeah, and that kind of brings us to, I think, one of the most striking images in the whole surah, which is the crusher. And now, we're told this is Allah's kindled fire. But do you think it's meant to be taken literally? Or is there a deeper, perhaps metaphorical meaning here?
I think that's a great question, and it's something that scholars have debated for centuries, Fire, of course, has a very significant place in Islamic tradition.
Right.
It can represent both purification and punishment. In this context, though, when I read it, when I think about it, I think the crusher speaks to the immense, inescapable power of divine justice. It's meant to evoke a sense of awe and fear, reminding us that our actions have consequences that extend beyond this material world.
And the imagery used to describe the crusher is so visceral.
Right.
It laps to the hearts and closes in on them in extended columns. It paints such a vivid picture of both physical and spiritual torment.
Exactly, yeah. It's not just about, the physical pain. It's about the agonizing realization, right, of the missed opportunities to do good, the weight of your transgressions.
Yeah. So I guess if we step back for a moment and we think about the overall message of the surah, what do you think is the most important takeaway for us, even if we're not coming from a specifically Islamic perspective?
I think, no matter what your background is, it's a powerful reminder that our words and actions matter, that we should be mindful of how we treat others, to be wary of placing too much importance on material wealth, that kind of thing. It's about focusing on what truly matters.
Okay.
Compassion, generosity, and building meaningful connections. And it makes me wonder, how can these verses inspire us to live more authentically and contribute positively to the world around us?
That's a good question. One for our listeners to ponder, maybe.
Definitely, yeah. Something to think about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for breaking that down with me.
Of course, my pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And thanks to all our listeners, as always, for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.
See you later.